Taair.
There was a point in my life that it occurred to me that, I should be eating healthier, eating more natural foods, and it came to me that I only want to eat what Mother Nature, in her wisdom, provided for food. And I started to realize that Mother Nature isn't really the provider like a lot of us think. I would say about 99.99% of all the food that we eat wasn't technically meant to be food for us. Let me explain. Take the animal kingdom, for example. You can eat the leg of a lamb, the wing of a chicken, the blubber of a whale, but if you don't eat any of these things, they still have fulfilled the primary purpose for which Mother Nature took millions and millions of years to evolve them for. The muscle, which is meat that we can eat, has as its sole objective to produce motion for the animal while it is alive through expanding and contracting. The fats that we can eat from an animal also serve as a place to store excess energy. Any of the organs that we can eat from an animal, the heart, the liver, the brain, all of these, first and foremost, serve a specific function for the animal while it is alive. That we can take an animal's life to sustain our own only fulfills a secondary sort of purpose. And that's certainly a matter of perspective, because from the animal's perspective, it doesn't benefit at all for us to eat it. Now, I don't want to offend anyone who feels justified in taking the life of another sentient living creature. I'm not judging. I can totally understand why you would feel that your life might be more sacred than theirs. But it must be acknowledged that nature has not created any animal first and foremost to be the food for another animal. It just so happens that some animals eat other animals, and also some plants also eat animals. This is how life evolved. But there are two foods that nature has created first and foremost to be food, but they're not animals. I'd like to draw your attention to the plant kingdom. Now, you can eat the pulp of a passion fruit or the stem of an asparagus, but the interesting thing about both of those is that neither one of them were actually meant to be food for you. Take your lettuce or that kale you mix in your salad. Those are actually organs. They're leaves that absorb photosynthesis for the plant while it is alive. You can take an onion, which is actually a bulb. Those are storehouses for nutrients for the plant while it is alive. That coconut water that you drink, it wasn't created to quench your thirst. It just so happens that it does. But actually, the water in the coconut supplies nutrition for the seed. What nature intended was that the coconut should evolve, fully ripen, drop to the ground, and become another coconut tree. Nowhere in that process does it involve you or me or any other animal eating it to fulfill its purpose. Of all the fruits and vegetables, none can be said with any confidence that this is what Mother Nature has made specifically to be a source of sustenance. That's not why nature took millions and millions and millions of years to evolve all of these creations. Again, not to offend anyone who might feel justified in taking the life of another sentient living thing like a plant. But one must acknowledge that Mother Nature has not created any plant to be first and foremost the food for another living thing. It just so happens that some animals eat plants, and also some plants also eat plants. This is how life evolved. But there are two foods that Mother Nature has created first and foremost to be food, but they're also not plants. So having eliminated the animal kingdom and the plant kingdom, I had to expand my thinking on this matter, because I'm thinking, Mother Nature's starting to look a little bit like a neglectful parent. So it led me to the issue of plant secretions. Now, there are certain trees that produce resins. We all know resins. They are actually used in the food industry as food stabilizers, and we use them for chewing gum and marshmallows. But the plant actually creates resin when it's damaged, and it works just like blood clotting. So it's actually there to heal the plant when it's damaged. It has no interest in whether or not we should eat it or any other animal. Mastic gum is an example of a resin that also is used frequently in food. But again, this is not why Mother Nature created it. Another example is tree sap. We're all familiar with tree sap when we process it and make maple syrup. I love maple syrup, love to put it on pancakes. But once again, this is what nature didn't intend for that to be food for myself or you. The tree sap is actually the blood of the plant that flows through its vascular system and supplies nutrients to the plant while the plant is alive. Can't really achieve that purpose once it's being eaten and digested in your stomach. So while we eat many plant secretions, none of those can be said to be first and foremost food from Mother Nature for us. So again, I looked at, animal secretions, also something that's very common in our food today. There's an example of a bird in Asia called the cave swiftlet. Now, the cave swiftlet is a bird that produces mucus so thick and sticky that it actually can make its nest out of its own saliva. So while nature has created it to help digest it and also apparently a form of construction, man has other ideas for it, and man has actually taken this saliva and made a delicacy out of it. It's actually called bird's nest soup, and they'll charge you over $100 for it. I mean, I wish I could collect the slobber from my pillow in the morning and charge somebody $100 for that, because I would be a rich man. But I don't think most people would like the taste of it. Another example is ambergris, which is produced from the sperm whale in the oceans. Now, why Mother Nature created it was that it was to coat any indigestible thing that should happen to get into the system to prevent harm to the animal. But what happens is that when it happens, the whale will vomit it out and it'll wash ashore. And it just so happens that it smells just like vanilla, a very pleasing fragrance for us. So it's used in perfumes, but it's also found its way into our food, and it's been used as a food flavoring. Castoreum is another food that's actually produced from the anal glands of beavers, and it also has a very pleasant scent, surprisingly. But what Mother Nature intended was that it would be used to mark its territory. But once again, some people got the bright idea that it would be considered a natural flavor. So watch out for all you reading the ingredient labels. And we're not the only animals that eat other animal secretions. Silk is produced by many creatures, and other animals will eat silk. Some ants will eat spider webs. Some fish will eat the cocoons. There are quails that love to eat the cocoons of ants. So this is not unique to us. Honeydew is also something that's produced by an animal. Aphids or mealybugs will get on a plant and suck the sap out of it, and they secrete, they don't secrete, they excrete out honeydew. Yeah, and it so happens that it's so sweet and nutritious that other animals will come and insects and stuff will feed on this honeydew. And again, it wasn't that they're doing it so that other animals would enjoy it. It just so happens that they poop it out and people like to eat it. Nevertheless, there are two foods that nature has created first and foremost to be food, specifically to be food. And they are both animal secretions. Those two foods are milk and honey. Now, don't get me wrong, you can take a milk bath, you can mix it with oatmeal and make a natural bar of soap. You can take honey and make a natural hair conditioner, and you can also use it on wounds. Manuka honey has been shown to be very effective on staph wounds. But the reason why Mother Nature created it first and foremost was to be a source of nutrition for the species. From an evolutionary perspective, these foods are very unique. When you think about it, most of the evolutionary adaptations that have occurred in nature regarding food have been to help an animal either capture, kill, and eat, or to avoid being captured, killed, and eaten. But here we have two anomalies, two specific, unique examples where a species was evolved to produce its own food from within itself. And I think that's quite extraordinary. It's also interesting that milk and honey have been mentioned in many of the sacred teachings of religion. It's mentioned in the Vedas, it's mentioned in the Holy Quran. Most of us are familiar with it from the biblical text where it says that the Israelites will be blessed with a land flowing with milk and honey. America has also been called at one time a land flowing with milk and honey. It's because it represents abundance. And why should it not be? Because when you think about bees, for instance, that produce honey, if you have a land that has honey, then that means that you have bees that are pollinating most of the crops. And as many of us know, bees, are very crucial to the agriculture of many crops that we grow. Now, whether or not we still consider ourselves in the land of milk and honey is, something to be debated, because honestly, sometimes it feels like we're more in the land of soy and Splenda these days. Now, again, I'm not trying to convert any vegans to, consuming milk or make any of the paleo lovers, move forward in time. But I do think that all of us should recognize and respect these two particular foods, because they are the only, definitely two foods that nature has produced first and foremost to be food. When you talk about an organism that was evolved to produce its own food, it's very rare in nature when you consider everything else. And because unlike other plants, animals, and secretions, all of these only become food secondarily. So again, milk and honey are first and foremost the true foods that Mother Nature has provided. Thank you very much.